everyone, welcome or welcome back. If you're new here, my name's Nina, and today we're going to be talking about a topic that I keep getting requests about and that we really haven't spoken about in a long time on the channel, and that is mental organization, or really how to declutter our mind. We can think of mental clutter as anything that gets in the way of us being able to think straight or carry through with our trains of thought, or be able to focus or concentrate, or really make the things in our lives that are actually important to us a priority. When we haven't been actively filtering through all the excess noise in our mind, we can feel like we are on overdrive. We feel completely overwhelmed. We feel like we are forgetting things. Things are falling through the cracks. We don't know really what things we should be focusing on, and we can feel very uneasy. And a lot of times that's because there's a ton of unprocessed emotions that we're also experiencing that we haven't even been able to address because there's all this noise that's in the forefront of our brain. I wanted to make this video today specifically because although this is a new skill for me, believe me, I used to not be mentally organized at all. This is something that really I have been able to work on over the past 3 years, and normally I'm quite good at staying on top with mental organization. Over the past 2 weeks, with everything going on in the world, I felt that this was really slipping away from me. I was watching the news more and more. That's not something that I typically like to do. I usually try to catch the headlines and that is it. But I was watching the news more and more, and I was getting filled with so many negative emotions, and my heart was so heavy, and that was kind of just mixing in with all the other things that I had to do, all the tasks, all the normal things that I have to think about, and it all kind of got jumbled together, and I was not able to effectively process everything that was going on because my brain was just so full. I knew I couldn't possibly be alone in experiencing this. I thought it would be a great time to make this video, and I also want to let you know that if you are feeling anxiety and worry about what is going on in the world, this is something that I have made a full video about, how to cope with negative global news and media that you find upsetting, and I will go ahead and link that down in the description box just in case you need further support in that area. But in today's video, we're going to be focusing on both short-term and long-term solutions for mental clutter. So we're going to go through an exercise that will help us to feel relief right now, but we'll also talk about some techniques and strategies that we can use to prevent mental clutter from building up in the first place. Learning how to mentally declutter is an invaluable skill because without doing so, we are going to experience anxiety, burnout, we're going to feel overwhelmed, we're going to feel like we are forgetting things. And for many of us, when we get to the point where we really are mentally cluttered, we have really unhealthy coping mechanisms for the most part because we don't really know what's going on. We can't really solve the problem because, again, we can't really get to the problem. And so we just do things that we think are going to make us feel better in that moment. We look for easy things that make us feel comfort, like sitting on the couch and endlessly scrolling through Instagram, or binging on Netflix shows, or eating junk food, things that we know really don't make us feel better in the long term and a lot of times are actually very negative in our life. We really just kind of cling to them because we're just trying to feel better. So I want to go ahead and talk about solutions for this, but before we do that, I quickly want to talk about what mental clutter usually consists of. The first thing is uncompleted tasks. One thing that we know for sure about the human brain is that it likes to finish things. It does not like to have things just kind of hanging out. It likes to complete tasks and file things away and keep things organized. But again, when we have a task that we have not started or that we have not completed, it is going to just swirl around in our brain, and it's never going to let us have any peace at all until we actually address the issue and complete the task. Just like with physical clutter, mental clutter is simply delayed decisions and delayed action in most cases. So if we have things that we know we need to do, that we know we need to finish, that are incomplete, it's going to remain as mental clutter that is going to keep us awake at night until we get these things done. The second thing is information overload. Now, throughout our day, our brain is taking in way more information than it can possibly handle. Now, some of this information is extremely important and we need it. We need to be able to organize it and file it away. And a lot of this information is complete garbage. We never need it again. And so, of course, we need to sort this all out. But a lot of times, instead of using discretion about the information that we are taking in willingly, we are adding to our mental clutter. And a lot of times this happens through social media, where we are looking at all these images of other people's food and where they went on vacation and what our 5th grade teacher is doing. And all these things that really aren't relevant in our life. We have to understand that even though we may feel that we are just sitting there and relaxing, we are stimulating our brain, and our brain doesn't know what to do with all this information. So it may, think about the tacos that your friend was eating for lunch and make that be a more important thing that it's thinking about than something that you need to remember for a test the next day. So we have to use a little bit of discretion about what types of information we are taking in. If we are willingly taking in all this information that really we have no use for, of course we're going to be mentally cluttered. The third thing can be unprocessed negative emotions. Now, of course, it is never fun to really experience negative emotions, which is why for so many of us, we prefer to try to stuff them away because we don't want to feel them. We don't want to experience them. But unfortunately, negative emotions do not go away when we push them away. They actually tend to grow and take up more and more mental space until we actually address them. Now, this is something that I do have a full video about. I will go ahead and link that down in the description box as well, so you have that resource. But unprocessed negative emotions can certainly contribute to that mental clutter. Now, the fourth thing can be unresolved issues. Now, these are all those things in our life that we know deep down we need to address, we need to fix, but we feel uncomfortable, we don't know how to fix it, we don't know how to address it, or it just makes us feel so uneasy that we are avoiding it. All of these things lead us to have unfinished business that causes mental clutter, and it also causes what's called rumination, where we think about something over and over and over because we are trying to resolve it in some way, but usually without taking action, we really can't resolve the issue. The fifth thing can be new information or experiences. Now, of course, in our lives, we generally prefer to be in the comfort zone. We prefer to repeat experiences in most cases. So when we are faced with new experiences or new information and new situations, we can feel like we are very overwhelmed because usually our brain can go on autopilot. We've seen these things before, we've done these things before, so we don't have to really think very hard or work very hard. But when we have new experiences, we have to take in all this information and try to process it and try to figure everything out, which can make us feel very overwhelmed and can certainly lead to mental clutter because we're not sure yet what things are actually important. Number 6 can be past troubles and mistakes. So even when these issues are far behind us, even if they happened years and years and years ago, or even if we can no longer do anything about them, they are still going to cause mental clutter for us until we are able to let them go. If we are still recalling them and thinking about them, they're always going to have a big space in our brain, which is going to contribute to that mental clutter. The seventh thing can be present worries and concerns. So these are all the things that are stressing us out and causing us worry right now. And again, it can be those big global issues like we were discussing. It can also be a lot of more personal issues. It could have to do maybe with our relationships or our finances, things like that, or a mixture of the two. And these things are very important that we address, but oftentimes because we have so much mental clutter, all of these things get buried so they don't really get the weight that they truly deserve. And number 8 can be things that we are trying to remember. I think so many of us are guilty of treating our brain like it is an actual computer and trying to get it to remember dates and addresses and names and faces and things that we don't want to forget. But it's really just too much information. We really only have so much, mental bandwidth. And if we are constantly giving ourselves things that we are trying to remember all the time, we are not only going to forget these things, but our brain is going to try not to forget them. So it's going to kind of loop around in our mind at times that aren't really appropriate. And maybe we are thinking about someone's birthday when we really need to be thinking about something that is much more pressing, because again, we haven't really filed this information and we are just asking our brain to remember everything. So these are the areas where the bulk of our mental clutter really comes from. So now let's shift into finding solutions, because if you are feeling mentally cluttered right now, we need to go ahead and fix that. And we're going to do this in the same way that we would address physical clutter. We have to be able to look through everything, examine what we have, and then figure out how to organize it and figure out what we need to keep, what's important, and what we need to kind of mentally throw away. Now, the easiest way to do this is through what is called a brain dump, which is simply when we sit down and try to download everything in our brain. We are going to write out on paper everything we are thinking and feeling without judgment. We are not going to be critical of anything that gets written down in the paper. We just want to get it out of our mind and onto the page. Now, this can include things such as tasks, thoughts, concerns, worries, emotions, goals, things that we have been putting off, appointments that we need to make, mail that needs to get sent, things that need to get taken care of, memories we are trying to preserve, and even the fun things that we'd like to include in our life. And don't stop there. Keep going with this. Write down even random things like that lipstick that you wanted to try, or that show that you wanted to watch, or that actress that you wanted to know where she was born, or that song you wanted to add to your playlist. Anything that has been occupying your brain, just go ahead and write that on the paper. Just let everything out. It's going to feel like you are purging, which is a wonderful feeling because you feel like you have been cleared out when we do that. Even before we organize, we feel like there is a weight off our shoulders. It really is just like when we physically declutter and we look and we see all this space that we finally have. We feel like we can breathe, which is exactly what we are doing when we are mentally decluttering as well. So in this process of letting these things live on the paper instead of our brain, you're probably going to find that many of the things that you wrote down really don't need to be addressed any further. Maybe they wanted to be heard, maybe they needed to be, remembered. So now that it's on the page, you can really just let it go out of your brain. But we're also going to find that a lot of these things actually are very important. And not only are they important, but they really require action. And we're never going to feel at rest until these actions are actually taken. Many times when we are experiencing anxiety, it's because we are feeling out of control. We feel like we are not taking action. And we will find that if we take some kind of action, even just planning to take action, even just taking the smallest step, we are going to feel a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better as these things are actually addressed. So what really needs to happen is that we need to look through this list and declutter this list. We need to, look for those things that really are just clutter, things that aren't important, that we can just kind of acknowledge and let them be heard and just get rid of them forever. And then look at the things that really are important. What things on this list really need my time and attention? And really take a moment to notice how you feel about these things and acknowledge probably a lot of the anxiety that you are feeling because you've been putting these things off. So that's really something that we want to think about as we are really sorting through this list. What things are in my control? What things are out of my control? What are the things that I can do something about? And then take a moment to really brainstorm what could make each of these things better? What actionable steps could be taken to fix this problem? So for example, if we've been, neglecting to send this package for 2 weeks, we could say that we could just go to the post office and send that package. And I know it doesn't even feel like it's that easy a lot of times, because once we put something off long enough, again, we really build that resistance. And I think that one strategy that we can use, even in the short term, is if we have a bunch of these things that we identify, that there are actionable steps that we can take so that we can, file them away and forget about them, to take a day and actually get those things done. I did that 2 days ago and it was amazing. I did things that I have been putting off for months, and even something that I was putting off for over a year that probably took me about 10 minutes to do. So if we can get determined and make the commitment to just make another short list of all the things that we can kind of knock out very quickly in a day, let's just go ahead and commit to doing this. Turn up the music really loud, or treat yourself to something really nice at the end of the day after you have completed all these little tasks. But all these things that are just swimming around in your brain that could get fixed within 5 or 10 minutes, let's just get those out of the way. And then for those bigger things, for everything else, we want to brainstorm what steps, again, could be taken. What could reduce my anxiety? What can make the situation a little bit better? How can this be, nagging at me or pulling at me a little bit less? What can I do? And so we want to break that all into tasks as well. Then we can simply take a piece of paper and divide it into 4 sections that say urgent, tomorrow, this week, and this month. So anything that we know we need to get done right away goes into the urgent list, and then everything else we can kind of sort through from there. And that's going to help give us an idea of priorities, which again just helps us to feel like we have a plan, we know what needs to get done, and then we can simply start doing these things. Now this entire process is going to take you no more than 1 hour, and you are going to feel so much relief if you really do this brain dump. And I suggest doing this on a fairly regular basis. It can be something that you do on Sunday night or Monday morning so that you can get organized and you know what you need to focus on for that week, and have an idea of the things that you want to slowly start to discard out of your life, because you're going to realize you do not have time and mental space for them. Now I really want to shift into long-term solutions. So we want to be able to prevent this mental clutter from building up in the first place. And I think a great way to start is to commit to having a quiet moment or a quiet time in your life every single day. And I know people argue with me all the time saying that they really do not have time to do this, but if you have time to scroll on your phone, or if you have time to watch a TV show that you're going to forget about the second that you watch it, you have time that you can dedicate to yourself to do this. And the reason why it's so important is because we do need to acknowledge and process our emotions and thoughts. And we really can't get to some of these bigger issues in our life when we have all these little things floating around. So if we are checking in with ourselves every single day through this quiet time, and this quiet time can consist of meditation, going on a walk, writing in a journal, that's a great one, or spending time in nature. These are all things that we can do to really quiet our mind down and kind of cut through the clutter. We can get in touch with what we are feeling and what we are thinking. Now, in addition to this, we also need to be on a regular basis checking in with all 8 dimensions of wellness. Now, if this is a phrase that you have never heard before, do not worry. I have a full video about how to check in with yourself using the 8 dimensions of wellness. I will go ahead and link that in the description box below as well. But really, it helps us to get mentally organized because it allows us to address different facets of our life that maybe really aren't in the forefront for us, but are important, and therefore are probably things that our brain is signaling to us that we need to address that we maybe are pushing away. So that is something that I definitely suggest as well. One of the most helpful things that you can do is to make lists for everything. There's really no way around this. Our brain, as wonderful as it is, simply can't keep track of everything. We need to have these things physically in lists. So make lists for everything, the things that you need to do for work, the things that you need to do for your child's school project, the things that need to get mailed, the emails you have to write, whatever it is. Get in the habit of writing all of these things down. Have separated lists, like I said, but then keep all of these lists in one place. I have all of this stuff in a giant binder. I know a lot of my clients prefer to keep things stored on their phone or their laptop, whatever system works for you, but do create some kind of organizational system. You will create so much mental space for yourself because you know everything that you need to do is on this list. It's in this binder somewhere. And like I said earlier, when we are able to kind of organize all these kind of practical things in our mind, all our thoughts and all our tasks and all these things, and they're filed away, it creates this wonderful open space for us that is really necessary to address some of the deeper issues in our life, some of the areas that in our life that probably need healing that we haven't been able to get to just because there's been, so much mental noise. And when we've been able to get through the mental clutter and we have everything else organized, we just have much more mental capacity to be able to start on a true healing journey and start to address these issues, to process these emotions, to think about our relationships or things from our past that, again, probably do need healing. Becoming mentally organized is truly one of the most beneficial gifts that we can give ourselves that truly leads to a huge transformation and change in our life. We can start to develop new habits much more easily. We can stay on top of the things that matter to us. We can have awareness of the things that we want to have as a priority in our life. And it also creates that space for change in other areas. We know that everything is connected. Our inner world is absolutely connected with our outer world. And when we have peace and calm in our inner world, we find that it's a lot easier to have control of our physical environment, which means it may be easier for many of us to declutter our physical space when we are mentally organized than if everything is kind of all cluttered mentally as well. So I really hope that you decide to go ahead and do that brain dump today if possible. It is going to change your life completely. You're going to feel so much better. And also, I truly hope today's video and the strategies that we talked about were helpful to you. If you enjoyed today's video, please like it, share it, and definitely become a subscriber if you are not one already. We want you to stay connected, and I hope the rest of your day is absolutely extraordinary.